access to the recordings from the Future of Work, as well as other webinars that the IEA has been holding on various different topics, including things like artificial intelligence and exoskeletons, amongst a number of other issues, which we've been trying to put together to provide to our membership. I'm just going to leave it 1 more minute, just to because I still see there's still a couple more people joining. And then we'll get started. The aim is to try to finish in an hour's time. I can see you from all around the world, so I won't give it the exact time, but the idea is for the webinar to last an hour. We'll first of all hear from our 2 fabulous speakers today, Agnes and Fabien, and then there'll be some time for questions. If you'd like to ask questions either during the presentations or afterwards, the best way to do that is to use the Q&A function on Zoom webinar. If you're using a desktop version or a laptop version, you'll find that at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a mobile phone, depending on your mobile phone, it's either at the top or the bottom of your screen. And it's basically got just 2 little dialog boxes to open up on that. All right, without further ado, I'm actually going to start now. You haven't come here to listen to my voice. You've come here to listen to the voices of our 2 speakers and their thoughts on the future of work, and what it might mean for their part of the world. So I'm very pleased to be able to introduce our 2 speakers today. Our first is Agnes. Agnes has worked as an occupational physician. At the same time, she's worked as a doctor at a university hospital in Nancy. And she's worked both in the area of epidemiology and dermatology. In 2000, she joined the INRS, the French National Institute for Safety and Health at Work, starting off working with issues of musculoskeletal disorders. Currently, then she became the head of the biomechanics and ergonomics laboratory in the same department in 2008, and then head of the whole department in 2013. And since 2021, she's been the deputy director of studies and research in the same institution. Fabien is an ergonomist, an academic, and a teacher and researcher at the University of Clermont-Auvergne, where he's an associate professor. He runs the master's degree in ergonomics, which aims to train generalist ergonomics. He's the deputy director of his laboratory and head of the technology activity and design research program. Fabien's research focuses on work-related musculoskeletal disorders, the evaluation of ergonomics interventions, and the design of systems incorporating emerging technologies that might support the development of work and workers. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Agnes to share her slides and to take it away. I'm going to be taking notes, but we look forward to your questions, which you can start right away. Thank you very much. I'm going to put my camera off now and I'll open it up again a bit later.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you at IEA for your invitation. Before I start my presentation, I'm just going to say a few words about my institute, INRS. It is the French National Research and Safety Institute for the Prevention of Occupational Accidents and Diseases, and it's managed by a joint board of directors representing employer associations and employee trade unions. Its goal is to contribute to the prevention of occupational accidents and diseases through a set of 4 complementary actions: studies and research, training activities, information on occupational safety and health, and assistance. Its watch and foresight activity feeds into these 4 areas with the aim of anticipating development as far as possible. And this brings me to today's topic, because my presentation is partially based on this foresight activity that is coordinated by my colleagues Marc Malonfer, Jennifer Cuerté, and before Michel Héry. I'm going to illustrate the challenges for occupational safety and health posed by the current changes in working world through the issue of musculoskeletal disorders. First of all, I'm going to briefly put the problem of MSDs in context. I will then look at the main development in the world of work in recent years and for the future, and the factors that determine them and their potential consequences for working conditions, using the circular economy as an example. Finally, I will outline a number of avenues of prevention in a context where traditional prevention practices are being partially called into question in France. In France, MSDs of the upper extremities are the first occupational disease in about 30 years. And it seems very difficult to control despite the many advances in knowledge and the development of prevention programs over the years. In the same way, low back pain is very frequent as an occupational accident, and both cause incapacity, loss of days, and exclusion from work and employment. The tendency is the same in the European Union, and this is a major concern for EU OSHA. MSDs are a complex occupational health issue for a number of reasons. Under this umbrella term, there are they encompass a wide range of pathologies. They are the result of multiple pathophysiological mechanisms. Their risk factors are biomechanical, psychosocial, and linked to organizational factors. These factors interact in a dynamic process in which the workers are active persons who take action. They do not suffer events, they take initiatives and develop margin of maneuver, a fascinating subject that Fabien will be tackling next. These risk factors can be present in the professional and extra-professional environment, and their influence may vary in function of functional capacities of the workers, including physical and psychological ones, depending on past occupational, personal, and medical history, genetics, etc. This subject is emblematic of polyexposure, and very interesting in the concept of the exposome, for which Yves Rockler and collaborators have proposed a model.
Sorry, Agnes, I'm just going to interrupt. For some reason, the presentation is in the presenter mode at the moment, so we can see your notes.
Okay, so I don't know how to change it.
When we tested it, it seemed to work nicely.
Yes,
but
well, I didn't change anything, so
I'm just trying to think on.
Perhaps can I? What to do? I don't know.
If you just click on that little presenter thing underneath the slides, does that change?
No, I can't pass my mouse.
Oh, it doesn't go there. Okay.
What's happened now?
And then just okay, and then just press present again. What does that do?
And in this way? No.
No, keeps going back to that.
I'm sorry, but I don't know how to do.
Okay, we'll just keep it at that.
Another way.
Sorry, Agnes. I'll just keep it there.
It's yes, I think it's not a good news.
Okay, so one of our speakers says, click the one that looks like a book. Click the icon that looks like a book.
Yes, but I can't change my mouse and.
Oh, you can't get the mouse across.
No, because I have two screens and I can't do from one.
I think it's the one on the bottom. On the bottom here, there's the one where it says presenter mode, and then just next to that, there's another one. I think if you click on that one, it should. In the bottom right, when you clicked on presenter mode, if you just click next to that.
I will try to. sorry, you. I can't do anything.
Okay. I think just go back to the presentation.
Yes.
I said if it can't be changed,
and
it's
I will
not.
do that.
Okay.
And what do you see now?
So in the bottom right-hand corner, so
Okay,
not
and
that
if I do that,
the one next to that. So not the one not the one that you were on, the one next to that.
so what are you seeing
Not
now?
that one, the one next to it.
Is there any problem there?
That's it. That's it. There we go. Perfect.
Okay. So I think I had, yes, I was in this part. In this model, the determinants linked to the company's external context are of macroeconomic, political, regulatory, and cultural nature. The determinants linked to the company's internal are linked to the company's management methods, the organization of production, the organization of work. The determinants linked to the work situation result from the interaction of higher order determinants and the characteristics of work situation. And then management practices influence physical and psychosocial work-related factors by determining the human resources allocated to production activity and the quality of work situation and work relation. All the determinants linked to the work situation combine their effect and at the level of individuals who in turn mobilize their skills and know-how to ensure not only production objectives, but also long-term preservation of their health and quality of life at work. The MST's prevention must take into account all these determinants and effects with feedback loops in order to be efficient. And these determinants are constantly changing, and the pandemic has acted as an accelerator for many changes in the workplace in recent years. This is leading to a renewal of practices in terms of prevention. What are the main trends in France and Europe concerning these determinants? Europeans are living an average 10 years longer than in 1960. The proportion of the population aged from about 55 and over rose from 25% in 1990 to 38% in 2022, where the median age was 44 years. As illustrated in the figures that source from Eurostat, the employment rate for people aged from 55 to 64 in the European Union increased from 40% in 2005 to 58% in 2018. In the same time, fewer children are being born, and as a consequence, the need to work until an increasingly advanced age. This situation poses the question of employability of older workers and linked to MSTs, both the higher prevalence of physical and cognitive natural deterioration due to aging, and the effect of cumulative risk factors for long careers. So so the gradual of deindustrialization in economically developed countries progressed in Europe, and we assisted to technological changes with the emergence of technologies such as informative and communication ones, big data, exoskeletal, collaborative robotic artificial intelligence, and so on. Another tendency was the growing trend toward tertiary employment oriented to personal services, retail, hotels, and catering, with work involving contact with the public, sick or debilitate people, and increased demand from customer and patients against a backdrop of ever-increasing rationalization of tasks. The changes in employment concern the weakening of long-term contracts in favor of short-term ones, and the development of new forms of employment, such as self-employed workers, cooperatives, and mission-based companies. And this trend can lead to increased job insecurity for workers, harm teamwork with frequent team reshuffles, and disorganized prevention work, which can be more complicated to coordinate in an increasingly flexible and agile organization. The rise of new forms of work headed by remote work is another major trend. And lastly, new forms of management were beginning to emerge with a more horizontal relationship, the development of algorithmic management, with all the attendant risk up to and including the potential dehumanization of the workforce. The pandemic has accelerated all these trends. New technologies are used as tools for communication, collective work, and automating production, not only in industry, but also in services. And the COVID crisis has been a major catalyst of remote work. In France, there were 4% of teleworkers before the crisis, and this rate increased to 27% after the crisis, from those 7 out of 10 telework regularly. The pandemic has also put the spotlight on the so-called essential workers, who in most cases are not teleworkers, and their working conditions, with a high physical and psychological demand, especially in care services, agri-food production, and distribution, transport, and logistics. Questions are raised about the relocation of some activities, have called into question work-life balance, social and gender inequalities, meaning of work, and the spread of the threatening symptom, the big resignation. In addition to this development, the business environment is also changing. I will not list all the components, just a few of them. Companies are faced with new expectations of young generations concerning the meaning of work, of work-life balance, respecting the environment, the relationship with authority and hierarchy. They are also now facing difficulties in recruiting and retaining workers in jobs that are in short supply, even though they are considered essential to society. They are also more and more concerned about the ecological challenges posed by global warming and supply constraints, the rise of circular economy. At the same time, the players involved in prevention are changing. Some traditional players are seeing their demographics collapse. In France, this is true of occupational health physicians. In the same time, other professionals are moving more easily into the world of occupational risk prevention. That's the case for some prevention workers, specialists in certain risks, toxicologists, occupational hygienists, ergonomists, psychologists in occupational health departments, and consultants in organization and well-being at work, physiotherapists and professionals specializing in physical activity. Finally, in large companies, occupational health and safety managers have become more professional with the development of increasingly advanced training courses. And all these changes have a direct impact on the emergence and disappearance of professions, skill management, collective work, relocation of certain activities, occupation of premises, work organization, exposure to occupational hazards, and safety and health management. Let's take an example with the circular economy. In 2017, INRS partnered up to explore the possible future of the circular economy for 2040 and to identify the occupational safety and health challenges. With regards to occupational safety and health, the challenge is key. The circular economy offers the chance for better integration of prevention ahead of the creation of new production modes, new services, and new products. But it can also result in negative effects if concern for the protection of workers' health is not taken into account, swept under environmental interests. Let's take the example of dismantling products such as end-of-life vehicle for reduced technical functions or raw materials. These products dismantling activities generate potentially dangerous work situations. Some of the processes involved are similar to those used in production or maintenance, but there is also a higher proportion of destructive processes and less familiarity with certain products due to the diversity of the vehicle to be dismantled, which were not designed with this in mind. This can lead to greater physical effort, posture, repetitive work, and psychosocial risk factors due to unfamiliarity with the product's source of stress, apprehension of chemical, thermal, and mechanical risk, uncertainties and hazards, high psychological demands, and so on. Sorting, verification, selection operations, which will increase, will not always be able to be automated. So the risk for MSDs can increase in these conditions because of the high variability of products, the potential increase of biomechanical and psychological risk factors. And so what? The description of these situations leads us to reflect on the best way of tackling the new challenge of prevention, like MSD's persistence, and it arises in a highly technological and digitalized world in which workers' aspirations are tending towards a better work-life balance in a world where the reality of global warming is tangible and the macroeconomic model is increasingly being called into question. On the one hand, model an aging working population, various forms of precarity, and the other hand, opportunities for prevention that are challenged by technological and organizational evolutions. Occupational health officers are equipped to act, but to what extent? In a fragmented world of work where the unity of time and place is increasingly virtual, OSH approaches, knowledge, skills, tools have to be appropriated by a diversity of players. Prevention practices have to be adapted to these new forms of work and employment. On the other side, remote work, virtual reality, digitalization of work must not erase the reality of certain working conditions that are part of traditional models or due to the re-emergence of old professions from the alternative economic model. There's strong need to develop a watch and an expertise on technological, industrial, environmental, and managerial development and their consequences for us. New technologies can help. The opportunities they represent are numerous. They can help for design of working situations, equipment. They are very useful for assessing exposure and its effects, and reinforce the traceability of exposure, especially with the development of low-cost devices for real-time exposure assessment in very diverse domains. They permit to develop predictive models based on big data that could be combined with the omic world, like metabolomic, genomic approaches. These are comprehensive approaches for analysis of complete genetic or molecular profiles of human or the organised, useful to explore biomarkers of exposure and of health effect on entire lifetime. These technologies give the possibility to interconnect and monitor data between prevention players. They can virtually bring together prevention players and workers, facilitate multidisciplinary work, training, and so on. But it's very important to know how to use data collected in the workplace from workers for collective prevention process. There can be a deep gap between the virtual representation of work and real work. One of the risks is also that of shifting prevention from a level of collective responsibility to a purely individual level in the quest for behavioral conformity. Another pitfall would be continuous control and the constant pressure that could be exerted on workers from traceability, who would no longer have any margin for maneuver and whose ability to take initiative and adapt to their working environment would be reduced to nothing, in fact. Okay, so creating an environment favorable to prevention supposes to maintain and clarify responsibilities in terms of prevention, including all the stakeholders, starting with the workers. One condition is also to enabling working conditions to be improved on the basis of real work. The role of ergonomists is crucial in this perspective. It's also fundamental to take into account the real work and its impact on occupational safety and health throughout the life cycle of products and process, from the design stage to the final one, that is destruction or recycling. Of course, we have to take into account the general principle of prevention, giving the priority to the conception, to the collective dimension of work, to the adaptation of work to man, and not the other way. And finally, integrate a foundation of basic knowledge and prevention, supporting workers throughout their career. This is very important in a fragmented working world. To conclude, creating a favorable context for prevention is based on 3 pillars: new roles, supporting social and professional dialogues within the organization in which people work, supporting technical organizational transformations, including the changes induced by global warming and decarbonization of production. The second one is the question of new skills to be acquired, knowing how to use data collected in the workplace and from workers for organizational and collective prevention purposes. And the third one concerns the understanding of technologies and their implication for work organization, especially information and communication ones, which must not remain in the hands of engineers, but involve from the design stage other crucial players, including, of course, ergonomists. So there's a strong need to develop a watch and an expertise on technological, industrial, environmental, and managerial development, their consequences for occupational safety and health. Safety and health, it supposes multidisciplinarity in participation at the heart of the prevention approach, a systemic approach that involves decision makers in strategic choices, And all these factors are really very important. We have to choose also to have a work environment that encourages the transmission of professional skills, both individually and collectively, the possibility of experimenting, iterating, and questioning on the basis of feedback as part of a continuous improvement process, and of course, the introduction of ethical questions into all decision-making phases. Thank you very much for your attention. I think it's okay for me.
Thank you very much, Agnes. We'll now move straight over to Fabien. Agnes will finish sharing, and then we'll move across to Fabien. There we go. Thank you. Thanks very much, Agnes.
Okay. Do you see my slides?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity for me. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to share our challenges in ergonomics with the international ergonomics community. My presentation is therefore entitled Designing Enabling Work Situations and the Experience of Ergonomic Interventions. I would like first to say that there are several other great university teams in ergonomics in France working on important and more diverse subjects than those I'm going to address. You can find a representation of this French community in ergonomics throughout the website of the College of Teachers and Researchers in Ergonomics, a national association which promotes the discipline in higher education and research in France. I had the honor of chairing this association until a few weeks ago. So, what I'm going to present is not only my point of view or my work. This is my updated vision of what our shared and ongoing history can allow me to say. This vision is therefore mine, but only mine, for a certain number of elements which will follow. We work in ACTE Laboratory, a multidisciplinary laboratory in human and social sciences at the Clermont-Auvergne University. In this laboratory, we are a team of ergonomists who work very closely with a cognitive anthropology team. You can see my closest colleagues here. My presentation will be structured around two topics. The first one is enabling situation design and operational leeway. And the associated question is how to support in ergonomics professional transitions, in particular digital transitions, and its impact on work. I will develop the idea that this transition must support development of possibility for action of individuals, and in particular, their operational leeway. On this topic, I would like to indicate here the upcoming publication of a collective book by INRS edition, Operational Leeway from Concept to the Transformation of Work. The second topic is that of the experience of ergonomics interventions as a new way to assess ergonomic interventions in a comprehensive approach to the activity of people involved in an ergonomic intervention. We need to better understand what effects, for whom, in what contexts, can be obtained from what types of ergonomics intervention. Everyone knows that the digital revolution is underway, particularly in the world of work. The digital transition is crossing all professional sectors. More often, the associated transformations have a negative impact on the quality of work that was poorly anticipated. Taking human work into account in design is not a new issue for ergonomics, but the speed of contemporary changes is very significant. These changes are presented as indispensable and are being imposed at breakneck speed, most often reinforcing a restricted vision of the human work. This is not new, but still relevant, to the point that today we speak of Industry 5.0 to highlight the overall inability to support human work in technological developments. My opinion is that the dispersion of subjects and approaches behind what we call human factors constitutes a weakness, that of not bringing strong, united, and fundamental requirements to designer. Let's take this example from our recent work on augmented reality to support complex maintenance operation in an industrial boiler room. Significant investments have been made to develop a solution that provides operators with live information on the equipment they are viewing. But after a few weeks of use, the operators abandoned their use, considering that the solution constrained their activity more than it supported it. The device also imposes a predefined order in carrying out the work, reducing the procedural and temporal operational leeways of the operators, making them dependent on the augmented reality device and limiting their autonomy. Let's take this other example. Here, you have an industrial workstation presented as the ergonomic workstation of the future. The operator launches the sequences to be produced with the interface and then grabs the parts to be assembled in the colored slots. The machine can detect an error, flag it up, and allow the operator to correct it immediately. In theory, this means less stress and better performance. The model of human being at work underpins these design choices. An isolated worker, a factor of unreliability, physical workload seen exclusively in terms of intense effort, with no consideration for static work and duration of repetitivity for the upper limbs, mental workload to be reduced to the point of disinterest. The tasks assigned are those that cannot currently be automated, and we wouldn't want to do that work. We can offer another vision of work based on relationships with others, on trust, on a global approach to health, on the investment of people, which also generates desirable concentration and attention. We can argue that this vision would ensure better overall performance and better attractiveness. Designing quality of work first requires us to formalize our conception of desirable work. Activity cannot be reduced to the performance of tasks totally prescribed by others. It's not sustainable. Human work cannot be how a robot works. Digital technologies are increasing the resources available to the managerial ideologies at work based on a human being who is faulty, tiring, a source of errors and moods, a human being who needs to be supported, augmented, controlled, and constrained because he is a source of the system unreliability. but this model also generates economic difficulties that are often unmeasured. There are companies today that are in economic difficulty, not for reason of market or machine production capacity, but because the people who are still needed in a number of places in the system are leaving. It therefore seems that a new demand is emerging in terms of quality of work. Maybe a consequence of a world in crisis, where people are looking to rebuild meaning in their lives. Whatever the case, the novelty of new technologies is not enough to make work attractive. What are the criteria for designing interesting, attractive, desirable work? So ergonomics faces a new challenge, continuing to seek the design work situations that do not harm worker health, an approach where health that needs to be protected, and at the same time, to design work situations in which people develop themselves as individuals, learn, and feel useful, a health that needs to be built by the activity of work. In France, a trend is developing around developmental ergonomics, with new proposals and models to put to the test. The discipline is probably less well advanced on this second issue. We are working on this question in terms of enabling situation design inspired by many researchers that I cannot cite here. I will very quickly present the 4 criteria. First one, not being incapacitating, which correspond to the criterion of preserving one's health and safety. Ensure better performance in real working conditions, which correspond to the usefulness criterion. Increase the actors' operational ways, which corresponds to the activity development criterions. Promote redesign in use, which corresponds to the criterion of appropriation and instrumentalization. We are currently starting 3 research projects where we will be able to test the interest of this approach to guide the design of future work situation. The second subject is that one of the experience of intervention as a new way to progress in the understanding of ergonomic intervention and respond to the current difficulty of the scientific literature on evaluation of intervention. I will be a little shorter here. I have already presented these axes at the last ODAM Congress organized in Bordeaux and a symposium called Participatory Ergonomics and a Realistic Review. We start from this observation. The 17 literature review studies over the past 25 years globally show the lack of effect of ergonomic interventions on the prevention of musculoskeletal disorders. The studies selected for these literature reviews have the following characteristics. There are studies that concern a minor change in the work situation for a large number of workers. Here you have some examples of these interventions that we call simple interventions. We therefore note that these literature reviews concern simple interventions, which globally show little or no effect of so-called ergonomics intervention. These interventions do not correspond to the intervention carried out by ergonomics practitioners in the field. However, they have the advantage of being experimentally accessible. So-called complex interventions are absent from these literature reviews. Their conclusions are not considered reliable by these reviews of scientific literature because they do not mobilize the classical experimental approach. They are, however, relevant in view of the state of knowledge on etiological models and in view of what practicing ergonomists consider necessary to do. So to sum up, we know very well what doesn't work, simple interventions, but we don't know well what works and why does it work. We are therefore faced with a very important challenge for ergonomics researchers, and field ergonomists. Knowing intervention better, teaching them better, optimizing them, demonstrating their effectiveness in order to act on the transformation of work are essential issues today for the discipline of ergonomics and for the profession of ergonomics. Our community must take up this challenge. There are debates about the relevance of the experimental approach to evaluate complex ergonomics intervention. We need an alternative model for evaluating them to produce this new knowledge, because the current knowledge does not study the relevant intervention practices. The realistic approach to evaluation was developed from the same observation. And to answer this question, what types of intervention produce what types of effect, in what circumstances, and for what types of actors? We added specific question: how to understand the actor's experience of the intervention? How do these actors become able to go beyond all the reasons that exist in your work organization to limit its transformation to local adjustment of the workstation, and therefore miss the main prevention factors? In our approach, this question is essential: how to mobilize a large number of actors for ambitious work transformation. We mean by experience the continuous flow of an individual's action, of his perceptions, thoughts, emotions, when he is in activity in a particular situation, and therefore interacts with his environment. So decisive actors in the transformation of work carry their own logics, which do not primarily concern prevention. Thus, they naturally favor transformations that do not disturb the state of the system with regard to the issues that are there. This leads to work transformation being limited to local adjustments, which only transform a small number of the determinants of the risk of MSDs, and therefore limits the ambition of ergonomics. It takes a very special kind of experience for a variety of non-ergonomic actors to agree to turn their day-to-day work upside down and embark on ambitious transformation of work. The ambitious transformation can only be achieved if the intervention transforms the actors themselves. The experience of ergonomics intervention is therefore essential, and the role adopted by the ergonomist is crucial. So, what it means to intervene in ergonomics? Does it mean being an expert who has standardized solutions derived from his knowledge that others must apply, possibly after training? The study we find most often in literature reviews with no significant effect demonstrated. Does it mean being an expert who analyze and show local needs and where to go? A specialist in ergonomics work analysis with its tools and models, with effect limited to what is deemed transformable by convinced actors by the ergonomics arguments? Does it mean being an expert of social and collective experience that leads to ambitious transformations, an investigator among investigators, when the ergonomic intervention is no longer primarily the intervention of the ergonomists, and therefore when the ergonomic intervention is likely to take direction unforeseen by the ergonomics, precisely because the ergonomics adventures presupposes a deep commitment which involves being able to influence the future of the intervention. From this perspective, conducting an intervention cannot consist of applying a treatment rigorously as it was intended to evaluate it experimentally, because this disengages the actors who then have no reason to fight for ambitious transformation of work. Which participatory processes lead to which experiences? It is certain that complex ergonomic interventions mix these different possibilities to be ergonomist at different times or stages. It is also likely that it will be necessary to adopt a privileged dominant posture to optimize the desired effects. We therefore need to better distinguish the different forms of these processes that use the term of participation. Also called participatory processes do not allow the same experience and do not have the same effects. What intervention models combine these different forms of expertise? How to assess them? There is a major stakes here to reconnect practice and research on ergonomics interventions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Agnes and Fabien. Some very interesting inputs here that go all the way from practical examinations of what's happening all the way through to philosophical ideas about what we should be doing. So thank you very much for those inputs. There were a few questions that came through while you were speaking, and I still invite other people to put some questions forward. I see, Agnes, you responded to one with a typed answer. One of the questions which has come up quite a lot is, could we have access to the slides? I've answered that one by saying that the session is recorded and that you will be able to get access to the recording in a day or two on the International Ergonomics Association's YouTube channel. And Maggie has posted that link. So if you just want to click on that link and save that link, that'll help you find it. And also those people who are wishing to get CPD points from their attendance at this webinar, what will happen at the end of this session is that you'll be sent an email and you'll have to just answer a short little survey. And if you get the answers right to the short little survey, then we'll be able to issue you with a certificate of attendance at the session. Right, I see there's two other questions that come in. Okay, is there a Facebook page? So there isn't a Facebook. Maggie, does the IEA have a Facebook page? I'm actually not 100% sure. We don't normally cross-post the information. We do have one. You're nodding. Okay.
There is a link on the IEA website to that.
Okay, so the IEA's website is iea.cc. And so there were two questions that came in on there on the IEA. So we do have a Facebook page. We also do have a LinkedIn page, and we also have an X profile as well, and that's managed by various different people. One of the questions that came up in the Agnes, you responded to this, but I think it might be just worthwhile just bringing it up, was the issue about climate change. and the impact that, we've talked a lot about technology and how technology is changing things. But the one aspect that came up as an interesting question is about the issue of climate change, and particularly in many areas of the world working under extreme heat conditions. And it relates to the issue of working from home or remote working, where you don't always have an air conditioner or an office environment that where everything is beautifully controlled for you. Or you are an agricultural worker, or otherwise work outdoors or work in, let's say, for example, in public transport, and you're having to work under these quite varied and quite unprecedented climate conditions. I don't know what either you, Agnes, or Fabien, have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a very large question because, of course, climate change is more and more important to take into account in terms of working conditions because of the physical constraints of extreme temperatures, of course, and because of the changes the changes that are necessary in terms of economical model and in terms of decarbonization. And it can change, of course, also the core of the profession's activities and create new skills and activities in work because of recycling, because of the necessity to do economies concerning, for example, energy consumption, and new problems arise because of these preoccupations. For example, concerning the batteries recycling, yes. Electrical battery, we say batteries in English, I don't know. And the risk of accidents because of the fire and that can be caused by this consumption. There can be chemical risks too. So it can change, of course, a lot of working conditions. There can be also compromise between economical and comfortable working conditions. You told about air conditioners to refresh the atmosphere, but air conditionings are also against the balance in climate, so it's a factor of climate change too. And a lot of firms have to do choices between some sources of comfort and other challenges concerning the environment.
Yeah, I agree. I'm typing an answer as well. Fabien, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Maybe we can add that an issue for ergonomics could be how to help workers to deal with all the prescriptions that there are targets, because how to make the ecological prescription not another prescription, and how to they already have to do quickly, quality, security, etc., and now ecological. I think we need a study of activity, of real activity, and the constraints that all these prescriptions are going to introduce in the work. That could be an issue.
Fabien, yeah, I tend to agree with you. There was another question just on this particular issue. myself and two other colleagues, we're actually writing a piece at the moment, particularly about climate change, and what ergonomics needs to do to deal with two things. The one is mitigation. In other words, how do we prevent the problem from happening in the first place? And then the big question, which is coming out now in these questions, which is around adaptation. How do we adapt to it? But you're quite right. There isn't a simple answer for everyone, a prescription that you need to do this. It is about understanding each work situation and what can be done in each work situation. How do we change the work that's being done? As you say, the activities that are being done, the equipment that is being used, the scheduling, and to create or to continue to have meaningful work opportunities. It was something I quite liked about your talk, is about that meaningfulness that we need to insert into not insert, we need to maintain and insert into jobs. I think we've come to the end of our session. So it calls on me now just to thank our two speakers. Thank you very much, Agnes and Fabien, for taking the time to put this presentation together, and your thoughts and sharing